Hey guys, I hope you liked my little mini trailer I made for the movie Assassination. I really enjoyed my time watching this film, and it was full of suspense and plot twists, as well as each scene had me on the edge of my seat. I really hope you guys do give it a watch if you haven't watched it yet. For the rest of the video, I'll go more in depth about the background of the film, including cast, summarizing the film as a whole of historical analysis, and telling you guys what I learned from watching this movie. So let's get started. This South Korean espionage action film was co-written and directed by Choi Dong-hoon. The film was released to 1,260 screens on July 22, 2015, and earned 3.59 billion won from 478,000 emissions. The main gist of the story follows three resistance fighters and their plot to assassinate the Japanese commander of the Korean garrison, and Kang Un-guk, a Korean businessman and Japanese sympathizer. We see a couple of notable actors and actresses in this film. Gianna Jun plays the dual roles of An Ok-yeon and Mitsuko. Captain Yem is played by Lee Jung-jae. We also have Choi Jin-woong as Choi Sang-hok, also known as Big Gun, Choi Duk-moon as Duk-sum, and Ha Jong-woo as Hawaii Pistol, Oh Dal-soo as Buddy, and Lee Jung-yeon as Kang Un-guk, the businessman. The film also features special appearances from famous actors Choi Song-woo as Kim Won-bung and famous actress Kim Ha-suk as Cafe Anemone's owner. This list comprises the most notable names of the cast. So for the next section, I'll be going over a detailed summary of the plot to give those who haven't seen the movie yet caught up to pace. I'll also add analysis to some of the true historical backgrounds of the events. So here we go. The movie starts off in 1911, Japan controlled Korea, showing a young resistance fighter, Captain Yem, who is played by Lee Jung-jae. He's on a mission to assassinate both the Governor General and pro-Japanese businessman, Kang Un-guk. He ultimately fails even with the help of Kang's wife, who dies. However, one of Kang's twin daughters was taken away that night by a wet nurse. The film then fast forwards to 1933. We see Yem Sek-jin as a captain of one of the many Korean independence factions at the time. Captain Yen meets up with two other well-known Korean politicians at the time, Kim Koo, also known as Kim Gu, and Kim Won-bung, and he is asked to gather three delinquent resistance members, Big Gun, Duk-sung, and An Ok-yeon, so they can enter Seoul and assassinate Kang Un-guk, the businessman, and along with Governor General Kawaguchi Mamoru. Alright, so let's take a step back here real quick and let me explain some background. Kim Gu was an actual real Korean statesman politician. He was the 6th and 9th and later the last president of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea and a key leader of the Korean independence movement against the Japanese Empire. He was a leader as early as the Dong-huk movement and sought reunification between the two halves of Korea until his death in 1949. At the time period of this film, he was serving as the vice president of the Provisional Government. On the other hand, Kim Won-bung was a Korean anarchist, independence activist, and statesman from North Korea. Around the 1930s, Won-bung organized the Korean National Revolutionary Party in order to gather more members for his cause of assassinating Japanese officials and their collaborators, a goal of his previous organization, the Heroic Corps. Alright, back to the storyline. So the rest of Yem's colleagues are unaware that Yem is secretly reporting back to the Japanese, since back in 1911 he was tortured by the Japanese into submission. So after bringing the trio team to Shanghai, Yem sells the info to the Japanese. However, the team were fortunate enough to escape to Seoul and gather plans to kill their targets. During their stay there, Kang's daughter, Mitsuko, bumps into An briefly at the department store where she starts to wonder if her long-lost twin is actually dead. Then, back at Hangzhou, China, Kim Koo questions Yem's loyalty after he learns that Japanese have raided the team's meeting location in Shanghai. He orders two subordinates to follow Yem around and kill him if he is a spy. Captain Yem then hires Hawaii Pistol and his assistant Buddy to kill the three resistance members, lying that to Hawaii Pistol by saying they are Japanese spies. Following that, the team proceeds with their operation. When the day comes, to their misfortune, the car they targeted was a decoy, and the mission ends up in a failure. An ends up locked up and handcuffed to Hawaii Pistol, where she learns of Yem's betrayal from Hawaii Pistol. Hawaii Pistol learns of An's identity and decides to spare her, sympathizing with her mission since he himself is Korean. Meanwhile, Yem visits Kang and informs him that the assassin who attempted to kill him was in fact his missing daughter from 22 years ago, taken by the wet nurse. So Kang and the group of soldiers find out where An was hiding and went to go kill her. They were unaware, though, that his other daughter, Mitsuko, was already at An's place, and they ended up mistaking Mitsuko for An and shot Mitsuko dead. At this point, An sees the perfect opportunity to salvage the failed mission. She assumes Mitsuko's identity and plans to assassinate both Kang and Mamoru at Mitsuko's wedding. A few days later at the wedding, An kills Kawaguchi Mamoru, and Hawaii Pistol helps her kill Kang. Big Gun, who is also there, helps the others fight off Japanese reinforcements, which allows for An, Hawaii, and Buddy to escape to Cafe Anemone. They soon get surrounded by Captain Yem and Japanese soldiers. With nowhere else to go above ground, they decide to go through an underground tunnel in the cafe. Hawaii Pistol, however, realizing that An can still pose as her twin, convinces her to go out like a hostage. Hawaii promises to meet her in the cafe they met in the Shanghai at the beginning of the movie. An walks out and is rescued by Japanese soldiers, and she is later sent back to Shanghai. Hawaii Pistol and Buddy attempted to escape through the tunnel, but Yem ends up catching them and killing them. The film fast forwards to after the war. The Japanese are defeated and Korea is liberated. In 1949, a commission of war crimes investigates Yem, a now senior officer with the Korean police, who protests his innocence and points to his resistance services. The only witness to Yem's guilt is found murdered, so the charges are eventually dropped. Even so, right after, Yem is cornered on the streets by An and Moi Young-woo, who survived his injuries early in the film but was rendered mute and slightly disfigured. They proceed to shoot Yem until he dies. The film ends with An reminiscing about her old team, Hawaii Pistol and Buddy.
대한독립 만세 해봅시다.
대한독립 만세!
어이 삼천볼 우리 집은 안 돼.
So that's the end, folks. This movie itself was a mouthful. It was filled with twists and turns of betrayal and deception until the very end. One thing I'd like to note is that the assassination-style events may have been inspired by true events. In the 1930s, Kim Gu, also known as Kim Koo in this film, founded the Korean Patriotic Organization. It was a secret organization that aimed to assassinate prominent Japanese figures of the Empire of Japan. It acted as one of the independence movements propelled by the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea. Prominent members of this organization included Young Bong-gil, who threw the bomb at the Hongkou Park incident, which killed and injured several high-ranking officials of the Japanese army. This was very similar to the calling of the Horror Corps that I mentioned earlier, in which Kim Won-bong helped to found. So I feel like this movie indirectly, if not directly, was influenced by the true events done by both of these organizations. Assassination was an intense watch filled with a bunch of historical references. I learned a great deal from this, and it reinforced what I found of Korean history during the Japanese reign. Throughout Korea's struggle with the Japanese encroachment and takeover, Koreans have sold each other out many and many times over again. We see this because of numerous reasons, like safety from themselves and those they care about, loss of hope from seeing failure after failure and independence seeming impossible, and materialistic wealth and personal benefits. All these seem to culminate into many Koreans just taking the easy way out and ratting out their fellow resistance patriots. It seems disheartening to think of this, but this is the sad reality. In the end, Korea was able to be freed from foreign rule, and that's what really mattered most.